psychology and counseling, stuff like that, their approach to early childhood development and rearing was just, I would say in retrospect, just amazing and a blessing. They, went as far as instituting something that was called the Jackson Academy. If your kid wants to come to kindergarten, they have to know like their ABCs, 1, 2, 3, right? And so instead of just singing the ABC song and practicing 1 + 1, our parents like went super formal with it. Hey, we're going to create a little Jackson Academy for our little tots, and we're going to teach them, their ABCs, 1, 2, 3s. But it didn't stop there. It transformed into, hey, you have a little designated time after school to go over your homework. What did your teacher say to you in class today? XYZ. Once you got to middle school, inspecting our book bags. Hey, you got everything? You got your textbooks? Hey, you have a test coming up. And then it kind of transitioned and transformed over time with our age to become more appropriate for where we're at in life. So by the time we hit college, it's questions about, hey, have you followed up with the guidance counselor for college? And that type of stuff. And so when you talk about being able to like hit the ground running, grinding and stuff like that, it was that environment of positive feedback, a positive reinforcement in our household from our parents, that started at an early age.
What's up, everybody? It's Willie and Alex from the Black Culture Podcast. I know you're ready to get into this video, but before you do that,
make sure to subscribe to our channel and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Black Culture Podcast. Willie, we got a very, very interesting group of guests on this morning, man.
Yes, sir. Two brothers, very educated, one's actually in the music. We'll get into that later. You can see them flexing. I think that's 2 bass guitars in the back. Looking nice. These two brothers are smart. I know a little bit about Cedric, but this Carlin character, I can't wait to get to know more about him.
Yeah, last night we was talking. We want to officially title this episode "Brothers in Tech," which has a double entendre to it. You know what I mean? You guys are actually brothers. So, Cedric Jackson, Carlin Jackson, welcome to the Black Culture Podcast, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us, man. Glad to be
here.
Very
glad to be here.
All right, let's start it with the Black Culture Podcast tradition, as always.
Toast it up.
And I feel like it's a real toast. Hey! Do the virtue. Yeah.
There we go.
All right, listen, fellas, let's jump right into it. So CJ, you gave us a little bit insight when we had a meeting with you last week of how you got into it. So let's start off.
Just for the audience, so they know, he's calling him CJ because it's Cedric Jackson Jr. So
okay, yeah. So CJ, and then we got Carlin. I'm gonna get a nickname for Carlin before the end of this show too, by the way. Clearly CJ's already taken, but we're gonna figure that out, man.
Right.
All right, so let's start with my man Carlin. Carlin, how did you first find this passion to be in technology and to do what you do? First off, tell us about your career. What do you do?
So I'm a consultant, a technology and strategy consultant. So I work with businesses on helping them operate and run better. And the main way that I do that is by utilizing technology. So these days, pretty much any business, even the ones that you don't think might be a tech business, you can pretty much find a way that you can utilize technology to make them better. Like if your job is to clean the streets, maybe you got to email your boss, and maybe you didn't have a computer. My recommendation to you is, hey, here's a phone that you can look at what your boss is emailing you while you're on the street sweeping. That's a contrived example, but the point is, when you analyze a business or a project, there's typically some way that the stakeholders can utilize technology to make the situation better. And at a high level, that's kind of what I do, figure those things out.
Right. So first off, how old are you?
I am 27.
27, and
he's younger than you.
You're right, and he's well established, and I know you have more that you want to get into, but when did you realize that, hey man, I want to get into computers and technology? Was it in high school? First off, I know you're gonna shout out the high school you went to because Alex is on here, so go ahead, get it out.
Cleveland Heights High School. I mean,
There you
what
go,
can I
baby.
say? You know, some
Okay.
things don't need to be said. Heights. That's all I gotta say.
So where did you find a love for it? Where does passion come from?
So my earliest memories playing around with technology actually is in church.
Mm.
You know, where the audio-visual systems at our local church. As a kid, I am very grateful that instead of like shooing me away and say, "Hey, get away from this, don't touch that," they allowed me to play around, help set up, break down things. You know, I got intrigued with
You said as a
connecting
kid?
as a kid. Yeah,
Man,
like
I
a
would get
really
my hand patted down as a kid touching anything. You was being invited to touch it, man.
well.
That's because you was a bad kid. That's
Stop it.
Well, I think it was part of it was like, hey, extra set of hands to help,
Mhm.
do stuff. If I guess the key was if you could be obedient and follow instructions, they'd be like, fine, we'll use you to carry stuff, little child laborer. But
wow.
It's
Wow.
true. It's true. It sounds
Hey.
harsh, but it's true.
Free labor, right?
You be
And
sitting
honest-
minding your business. What are you doing? Get up and do something.
But in all honesty, it was, opportunities, plug things in here, over there, and you just get really intrigued with how things work. And I think that was kind of the key underlying theme across all my curiosities into different subjects. It's all born of my desire to understand how things work. And so, when you go down that path, it's like, how does this audio, church sound system work? And then from there, went to being curious about how video systems work. And then just, computer networks, and then computers themselves, and then programming. And, of course, this is a story that, is played out over many years of time from childhood through college, but that kind of same underlying question is, how does this work? So yeah, I say the roots of that are actually just my experiences being in church, actually.
So, fellas, this is Black History Month, and generally during Black History Month, especially growing up, we learned about individual Black accomplishments, from whether it was someone who invented something or someone who was part of civil rights movement, but rarely do we talk about Black families, right? Successful Black families. And you two are brothers in tech, actual real brothers, grew up under the same household. How common is it to have family members, and I would say in the same industry, but just different sides of the industry, both successful and growing? How common is that? Is that something that you see in your work a lot?
To be completely honest, it's not something that I see a whole lot. It probably does exist. I just haven't seen it a lot. But I feel like as times progress and perhaps opportunities are made more readily available, you will start to see more of it. But yeah, that's unfortunately something I haven't seen a lot of. So I realize that I'm in a pretty awesome situation to have a younger brother who's also into tech.
Hey guys, this is Willie from the Black Culture Podcast. I know you're enjoying this dope interview, but before you continue,
Make sure to like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Black Culture Podcast. So let's get into your story then, CJ,
Mhm.
because you're a very interesting guy as well.
Uh-oh.
And but you're the older brother too,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
So let's get back. Let's kind of take a trip back in the past of how it was growing up in that environment, and the two of you being as curious and talented as you are, as well as how did you get involved in tech and kind of nurture him in a sense. You know what I mean?
Honestly, so it actually goes back further than maybe even, or maybe around the same time as like church and tinkering and that type of thing. Our dad was very technical in that he loved to tinker with things, uh, video cassettes, that type of thing. I remember he used to play with my dad's camera and tripod and stuff like that. Even as like a toddler, like I used to flip the vacuum around and act like I was playing keyboard. I've always been very intrigued by how things work together, and can I install this on this. Like even back to like elementary school, we had pieces of drum set around in like the band room, spread across to like the gym back room. And I started thinking, wait a second, if I could put the pieces of these drum set parts together, then I don't have to play just the snare anymore. I could play the drum set. And lo and behold, I was able to do that. So like I think a big part of me being technical was just kind of the environment that was nurtured in the household. But getting into your second part, as far as being able to grow up with a brother in a house who was also technical, I think I definitely fed off of Carlin's curiosity, and perhaps he did mine. We've always been tinkerers when it comes to like software and learning how things work. Even dating back to like, if you guys had like Sony Walkmans or like MP3 players, try to figure out the best way to get music onto them, and listen to all the music that was on CDs and transfer them and stuff. So I'd say definitely we were in an environment that nurtured it, and I think we both, me and Carlin, fed off of each other's curiosity.
Okay. So, hey, real quick, Willie, before you go, hey, Cedric, what high school did you go to?
Oh my
Cleveland
God.
Heights.
Sorry, man. I just had to do it.
Gotta get another eagle on this podcast, man. Jesus Christ. All right. So for the audience, these two gentlemen come from, as Alex and I have discussed, a successful family. We talking lawyers, we're talking attorneys, we're talking social workers. So with that being said, how was it like growing up, like figuring out where do you guys, your career path? Was it like pressure because you have all these, and you even said your dad was into tech. Was it like pressure,
That's a
like,
great question.
man, thank you. Was it like, man, I got to make sure I'm doing so? Or was it just normal? Like, it's just something
So
you just fell into?
the latter, what you said, literally the environment it was assumed you're going to higher education. Like they never really had to say it. It was just like something that was the standard. So there was never any forcing. It was like we subconsciously were willing to do what it took to get to the next level. So um you know from middle school to high school, even though I very much was into music, God worked things out to where I began to really focus in on the education aspect, so that when it was time for college, like, okay, now I see my way clearly to college, that type of thing. So to answer your question again, like, I think there was just like an unsaid standard as far as, okay, uh, you know, God has a plan for you, and part of it might actually be higher education. So you need to make sure that you're doing what you need to do in order for that to happen. So yeah, I can never say that I felt a whole lot of pressure. I think it was just the standard.
So
So let me
I think you about
jump
to
in real
say, ask
quick.
the same thing I said, but go ahead.
Yeah, probably. So I want to ask Carlin, you being the younger brother, he just mentioned the standard. What was the standard? Like how do you set the standard, and you growing up, what was it like for you in that same household?
Yeah, so to kind of speak at least from the higher education side of it, um, you know, when you think about K to 12, when you're in kindergarten or first grade, whatever, it's just like you don't even think about it. Your goal is to get to 12th grade, right? Like to graduate high school. It's people don't have to like, hey, remember the goal is to graduate high school. It's just you kind of learn about it from your peers, just through the institution itself, that school is something that you finish elementary school, you finish middle school, finish high school. And so I guess the best way to put it is that around those are early, because we had examples of aunts, uncles, family members who were in college. It wasn't, finish high school. It was just like finish college. So it was like literally like freshman year of college is 13th grade. Like it's as natural as that. It was never just the notion that, okay, high school, then something big, maybe college, maybe something else. It was literally just, you know, you're not done. It's like, okay. Um, and so I would say that's kind of this quote unquote standard from high school. I mean, for higher education. But in terms of like, maybe a more general notion of like excellence, like maybe in career or just other parts of your life, I think it was really the standard was, are you doing the best you can? Are you putting into it everything that you feel that you should? And when we feel, of course, we kind of go a little deeper, being, Christians, if you're praying about it, if you're prayerful and you feel like God is having you to do something, well, then are you putting your 110% to what you feel you're led to do? sometimes for some people that's not to pursue higher education. Maybe it's to directly start pursuing a vocation, or maybe it's to invest all their time into supporting their family for that stage of their life, and that maybe they're supposed to be a non-traditional student later in life. Whatever the situation is, the standard of our family was, are you doing your best? It's like, for me, sometimes that meant getting D's in classes or C's in classes. But I think the overall trend for me was I was able to have success because if I knew that that C was the best I could do, maybe that's just a sign, okay, for this subject or this situation, that's not it for me.
Not to cut you off, but I'm not buying that you got D's. I just want to throw that out there.
Oh, I Case, my freshman and sophomore year, there was a couple classes where I got D's. No lie. It was hard. It was rough. It was the first time. But I was like, okay, well, now I know this subject ain't it.
All right, so
But yeah,
no,
but I think part of it was like, it could have been when that happened, it could have been a situation of, oh, do I accept this as an internal failure, or do I just use this as a learning opportunity to say, okay, yeah, I did my best, wasn't good enough here, let me retool, try again later.
okay, so obviously you guys both mentioned the standard. The standard was already set. So let's, because after this, I'm sure Alex is going to jump into CJ's career. But before we do that, explain to me how different it was, because a lot of kids in high school, they don't have a standard. They may have a standard, but the standard may not be as high as your family has set for you guys. Did you guys feel like different, or did you feel pressure, or did you feel like everyone like the weight of the world was on your shoulder because you guys live with a standard? Not, and definitely Black families, a great standard or a standard period is not set in the household. And you can tell now, looking at what you guys do now, that, like you said, the standard was set. So explain how it was being in school, being those, and I'm sure you guys in school were made known as the quote unquote, as they say, the smart guys in school. Like, explain to like the standard, how was it in school?
Honestly, for me, I think 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, those were like, I need to really grind. I need to really grind. 11th year, that's when I really started focusing on, okay, there's life after high school. What on earth am I going to do? Um, Again, the standard was set that in giving your best, perhaps higher education was the next thing. So I think I definitely felt a sense of purpose because of the examples that were set for me, or in my atmosphere. So I didn't really start feeling pressure until like maybe midway through my 11th grade year. But I feel like that might have been the same pressure, or close to the same pressure, that all kids back then would maybe experience. Like, what am I going to do with my life? I'm about to be an adult, 18, that type of thing. So I felt like a healthy amount of pressure, but only really towards once I got to the end of my high school journey.
So you guys were well ahead, because you said you grinded immediately in 9th and 10th grade. And I know you guys seen this a lot in high school. A lot of kids don't start grinding until 11th grade. And then you look up, man, I don't have all my credits, man, I need to do this. So the fact that you came, like most freshmen going to high school, like, yo, man, I'm in high school. Like it's a new experience. So shout out to Mom Jackson and Dad Jackson. They like literally, they prepared you guys. Cause like I said, definitely in kindy, now I saw a lot of kids that went in, man, 9th and 10th grade was just hanging out, chilling. And then you get to 11th, 12th grade, man, I graduate next year. I need to make sure, and you behind. So you guys seem like you were already ahead of the game.
Dude,
We be remiss not to shout out our parents, because really, one, without them, we're not here, clearly. But two, it's almost like the environment of our household was like almost a perfect setup for like a lab experiment, from my mom's professional educational training, being like a organizational wizard and master. So you're talking about understanding how to organize the operations of a household, and to my dad's background and educational background and religion and psychology and counseling, stuff like that. Their approach to early childhood development and rearing was just I would say in retrospect, just amazing and a blessing. They, went as far as instituting something that was called the Jackson Academy. And what that was is basically, you know, there was the standard of our Cleveland Heights education system was that if your kid wants to come to kindergarten, they have to know like their ABCs, one, two, threes, right? And so instead of just singing the ABC song and practicing 1+1, our parents like went super formal with it. Hey, we're gonna create a little Jackson Academy for our little tots, and we're gonna teach them, their ABCs, one, two, threes. But it didn't stop there. Once we did get to kindergarten, it transformed into, hey, you have a little designated time after school to go over your homework. What did your teacher say to you in class today? XYZ. Once you got to middle school, inspecting our book bags. Hey, you got everything? You got your textbooks? Hey, you have a test coming up. And then it kind of
Programming.
transitioned and transformed over time with our age to become more appropriate for where we're at in life. So by the time we hit college, it's questions about, hey, have you followed up with the guidance counselor for college? And that type of stuff. And so when you talk about being able to like hit the ground running, grinding and stuff like that, it was that environment of positive feedback, positive reinforcement in our household from our parents, really that started at an early age.
Wow, that's awesome, man. And I think we just interviewed Ron Johnson. I think you guys remember him from Men's Monday. And we kind of had a little bit of this conversation with him, but he was talking about how these conversations need to start when you're in like fifth and sixth grade. You obviously grew up in a household where they were intentional and purposeful about programming your mind to be and to think successfully, right? So CJ, want to hop into you. So shout out to the Heights.
Oh yeah, man.
But
Give me a
you,
break.
you literally just left a high position at Sherwin to move over to Disney, where you serve as the senior video playback developer. But that's not all you do. You're also a musician, fitness guy, and probably a whole bunch of other stuff you didn't send me. But how do you balance your career and the hobbies and the duties? Well, I should say you have more than one career actually. How do you balance all of it?
Honestly, rest. Like realizing that the body has its limits. I'll use an example. Like just because things seem lawful doesn't mean that they're expedient. Uh, I'll use a fitness example. So I used to work out at Cleveland State University, and like I really used to grind with the weights and
Great
stuff. Right?
gym, great
You're right,
gym.
dude. It's the dude.
They got everything.
What you get for the money is incredible. But like so, you guys are familiar with calf raises, right? So I think I worked my way from the very bottom. I got up to like 405 pounds with calf raises, and my body could do it, but I didn't realize
Now,
that
now were these the standing calf raisers or the seated calf raisers?
these were the Smith machine that you
Yeah.
use for squats.
Yep.
I was doing it off of that machine.
Okay. Okay.
So 4 plates on each side. Um, just because the body can do something doesn't mean that it's fighting. What you're doing is fighting against it. So over time, it was weakening the bone, the Jones bone or something in my foot, and it didn't. My foot didn't break during the exercise. I went to go hoop, and on the first play, I caught the ball, faked, got my guy in the air, ran to the right, and my foot cracked. And I never felt instant pain like that in my life. So the whole point is just because you have all these passions and goals and ideals doesn't mean that you can always act on them all at once. So getting back to your original question, um, I have to build an amount of rest. I have to be strategic about how I spend my time. I really do enjoy coding, but if I only do one thing, then I'm gonna be burnt out for that one thing. So that's where I incorporate music. My personal worship, that's my excuse to like actually dig into practicing bass or drums or keys, which is why basses are right in the back of my room. Sometimes I might not be able to get on my drum set. I'll get on my practice pad at least Monday through Friday, or practicing for church. I'll jump on the organ or keys and make sure that I'm locked in. Being able to have diversity in problem solving really keeps your mind sharp, but then also building in rest is super important. So like I have a lot of passions, but I realize that there are limits to how many things I can do in the day, and I have to build in the rest aspect.
Wow. Wow. So, Senior Video Playback Developer for Disney streaming. How big is that?
Dude, I'm still processing it. And if you don't mind, I'm gonna step back a little bit.
Go ahead.
Um,
Go ahead. Do your
so
thing.
I was working at Sherwin-Williams. I was brought in to help bridge the gap between the global user experience team and the developers, like a team of like 30 developers. The issue was that they wanted to upgrade their code base and they needed someone who knew the new technology, if you will, called React, but also had experience with like graphic design and research and being able to design stuff basically. And so Sherwin Williams found me, reached out to me. I had certain conditions. They were able to meet them for the most part. I joined the team, but then I started to feel towards the end of last year, like, God, I feel like you might be pushing me in another direction. I need to let you, please let me know. And then within a couple of days, my new manager at Disney reached out to me, did not know me at all, and said, "Hey, based off your skills and experience, we think you'd be a great fit." So, like, I did not realize how powerful Disney was, and I'm still figuring it out. But Disney owns like everything, and just to kind of zero into specifically what the position is about, um, all of Disney's video, whether it be movies or TV shows or whatever it is, um, how you're able to view them is because there's a video playback engine that kind of makes everything work, and that's what I actually code. So uh, I'm actually new to the video space, but the reason why my manager, who's actually the guy who built the thing from scratch, trusted me to come in is because the learning aspect. If you're someone who's able to learn and pick up concepts and you're self-driven or motivated, then you can 9 times out of 10 learn this stuff, even though there's a steep learning curve. So keep me in your prayers. But man, it's way bigger than I would have ever imagined. But it's a testament to how real God is and how faithful He is, and His plans are way bigger than our plans that we can contrive. So,
Wow. Nice, man. Nice, brother.
thank you,
Hey,
man.
hey, before you move on, CJ, I want you to if I'm saying it right, correct me if I'm wrong. You went through something health wise in your life, right?
Yeah. So like,
Yeah, jump into that and explain that story and tell us how you managed to get through that.
yeah, honestly, so I'll start. I mean, I had like my appendix removed, and it was a major thing for me, but I know it's a really more or less common. Um, but like that was my first medical bill, and like I was like, oh snap! Like I have medical coverage, but there's still overage that has to be paid. And so learning how to, work the system and get everything up to par, it really made me zero in on my health. And that's really a time where I started really getting into fitness and making sure I had like a long-term goal of I need to be healthy. I want to be fit and mobile. And when I put my body in a position to be able to handle whatever life throws at it, that's my long term goal. But then, or that's my mission. My long term goal is I want to stay in a size 32 pant, you know. Uh, and then my daily task is I need to be active for 50 minutes every day. Being able to set those types of goals are crucial, or you'll fall off the wagon. And then like I just told you about the second major thing for me, which was the foot breaking my foot. Like I have a metal steel plated screw in my foot because of that. And it taught me that there's limits to stuff. You can't do everything just because you think your body can do it. You need to exercise wisdom. There needs to be balance. Just because I want to be strong doesn't mean that I can do everything I see other people doing. So, I think my medical past has kind of taught me balance and limits and how to work within a good system for longevity. So yeah.
Wow, wow, that's incredible, man. So that's why you be hitting that drum pedal so hard. Like, man, that bass sound loud.
Right. It's
I'm just
I'm
playing, bro.
You
But
got
no,
metal
dude.
foot on the bass drum.
Right, you got a
right,
metal
right.
foot on the bass drum, man. No, super talented dude, though, man. In fact, I don't think I know what all instruments do you play.
So drum set was my first instrument, and then what, seventh grade, or I got just finished practicing for like an hour, and I felt leading of the Holy Spirit saying, you should pick up bass and keys. And so at that moment, I stopped playing drums, and I talked to mom and dad. It's like, Mom and Dad, I want to play bass and keys. And they laid hands on me, and I started playing bass and keys around the same time. Later on in life is when I got access to our church's organ, and that's when I started playing organ. So around maybe right when I started college. So four instruments, and playing those really um, are really fun and give me a hobby to kind of invest in that I can in turn give right back to God. So it's awesome, man.
Wow, man. So I only play one, so I really feel like a loser right now after hearing you say that,
Come
man.
on, man.
It's funny though because I stand by this, and no one will ever change my mind. I feel like if you can play keys, you can play any instrument.
Yeah,
Like,
and keys are usually the priority, right? So it's just like if we need any musician to carry a service or for any type of event, the first person they're gonna want to have is the guy on keys.
hold on, real
So
Without
quick, time out.
they usually get the biggest check, basically.
Let's just throw it out there. My man, me and my man Carlin, actually, we sung background for the church praise team. So I just
Yeah,
want to throw that out there, man. We was part of the tender section, holding it down every Sunday. So there you go, Carlin. That's our shout out right
there
there,
we
and
go.
man.
Car-
Because honestly, I do think that if it was a choice between, our vocal instrument and the keys, I think the vocal instrument is a little bit more important
There you go.
for
right,
church
right.
service. So
Speak, speaking
Yeah.
of which, speaking of which, Carlin is into composition as well. Although
yes,
you don't see him playing an instrument on Sundays, he's very much into composition. Whether it's like composing lyrics or music, he's very much into that. So,
So
appreciate that.
so I have a question for the brothers. So
mhm.
um I was reading your bios, or I read them when you first sent them, and then I read them again. And I'm thinking, like, I text Will. I said, "Man, did you read these bios, man? These dudes are brilliant." So I'm wondering, like, just from a healthy brotherly relationship standpoint, how much do y'all be in competition with each other?
Okay, so that's one of the things that was not allowed in our household,
Yeah.
and it was like an unspoken thing, like
Yeah, but y'all don't live at
dynamic.
home no more.
so
Right.
literally, so literally, so literally, actually, I think a lot has to do with maturity. As you grow closer to Christ, He gives you how to view other people, including those closest to you. I fed off my brother's example. Like I think I told you guys in conversation, what, a couple weeks ago, college, like that was I came in thinking I was prepared. I started as accounting major, took my first accounting course and economics and statistics course, and realized I hated it. It's not so much that I couldn't do the work. It's just that like I don't want to do this as a career. Like I will not like it. At that point, I didn't really know what to do. I didn't know about the computer science track. My sister actually told me about it, and I started that track. My brother had already started coding, and he was still in. By that time, he was a senior in high school. Carlin helped me through college, like because I started the computer science track like right between I started at an awkward point, so I took all types of courses out of order. So I took a really high level course when I should have been taking a lower level. So Carlin was able to help me because he got into it first. So getting back to your original question, there really wasn't that competition aspect. If anything, I actually benefited from my younger brother's knowledge and passion for computers and coding and stuff like that. That's a blessing. And honestly, like I think part of the reason why we still have a good relationship to this day is deeper than just that we're brothers, because even that can be abused at some point. But I really think it's really leaning into God and giving a complete yes and being like, hey, dude, they can do then. I'm going to seek to understand my brother and feed off of what he's doing. And I feel like that's really worked for me.
I got a quick question, Willie. Do you have any brothers?
No, I have cousins that I'm close to that you would think we're brothers,
Man, I
That's
don't
what's
have.
up, bro.
and we compete all the time, still to this day.
You compete. See, I don't have any brothers, so I'm a little jealous right now.
Honestly, okay, so
Yeah.
let me rewind a little
Nah,
bit.
I'm joking, bro. But
So
no, that's incredible, man, because you rarely get the opportunity to see that. Like, okay, you mentioned you're growing up in the church and whatnot, and in the Bible, it talks a lot about family. And nowadays, especially in our community as black men, you don't really see brothers. I'm talking about the ones who are actually related being able to come together like that. Now, you said you weren't in competition with him. I wonder if Carlin felt like that. But anyway, Carlin, let's let's dig into your career because you have a really interesting work experience. Your resume from where you are now to all throughout college. I wanted you to talk a little bit about because you did a lot. I wanted you to talk a little bit about that. You went to Case, right?
Yes.
You went to Case. So tell us about that experience and how it led up to where you are now.
Um, yeah, one, we always go to God, pretty much everything being just try to have an ultimate perspective of gratitude. That's why I always going to hear us shout out God for like every question you're going to ask us. But um, I was wrapping up high school. Kind of just apply to area institutions. Cases in the backyard of Heights, and I was grateful to be accepted. And so, pretty much from great, you hit the ground running. Get you, during the summer before school starts, they bring you on campus. And again, I'm a curious person, so I'm asking all the staff around me, like, who is this? Who does this? Who I kind of a that kind of stereotypical ambitious kid who doesn't know their place, quite kind of. So I literally was like, who runs the IT at Case? Who's the CIO? And oftentimes what happens is those in authority and position of power, you know, they get intrigued by like the young guy who isn't afraid to ask questions. And then even further, because I was a young black guy, it was like totally an anomaly. So here's, some kid who's hasn't even graduated high school who got accepted, who's asking to meet with the like CIO of Case Western Reserve University. And so, I mean, you know, I'm grateful that he was someone who was open and willing to say, hey, let me, see what this is all about. Met with me, say, you know what, once you start school, I got a job for you. And things kind of snowball from there. Being able to kind of at a very early age have my coworkers, my peers really in the workplace be, those like 50 and up with, positions of power, being able to talk and get comfortable and, be confident in myself. I'm 17, 18 years old, and yet I'm already being able to start transacting at like a kind of a more fully baked adult level. And so without going, super long into it, between what I studied, being able to get internships at kind of related tech type of stuff, since I'm studying tech in college, the approach didn't end. At every job I ever had, I will always request, if I could, to meet with my bosses, meet with the head of the company, like, hey, what is it that you do? How do you go about your job? Why did you get into it? Basically, reverse interview them, um, but what I found is that by the time I graduated, having done that at every job I was at, I realized that process in of itself is kind of what I'm interested in. Understanding a business, the hows and whys of it. And so by the time I graduated, I was like, do I want to just, get a normal job and be kind of like a typical cog in the wheel, punch in 9 to 5 and do my thing, go home? And I realized instead, this I exercised the activity of asking questions and getting understanding so much that that's actually what I wanted to do. And I realized it kind of mapped closely to kind of consulting. And so I ended up, as soon as I finished my master's, I uh, filed papers state of Ohio, created LLC, and I was able to, just kind of tell all the folks in business and technology that I worked with, hey, I'm doing this thing. And it was kind of slow going at first, but I've been able to sustain 1 to 2 projects, every year ever since, without much overlap, and I'm grateful for it.
Okay, so I have a 2-part question, right? So since it's 2 of you, obviously, I'm gonna ask CJ one question. I'm gonna ask Carlin the other question. So CJ, you are the youngest, so you get you're the oldest, so you get the first question. So the first question is, what is some of the challenges you face, like being in the tech industry? And for you, Carlin, you can work on your question while he's answering this. Your question is, I want you to explain to the audience if you notice any racism or in your industry, being young, Black, well educated in the industry, and did you feel like maybe other races or cultures were intimidated by, wow, we got these 2 knowledgeable, because we got these 2 knowledgeable young black men, and that's like something to where that could scare them, and they could get like just be scared and not like, yo, this is scary. This is not what we don't like. So that's your question. So CJ, explain to us some of the challenges you face.
Absolutely. So just at a fundamental level, uh, focus is definitely something that you can struggle with in my field. Like, it's so easy to you graduate from college and say, "Hey, I have this fundamental skill set," and then it'll be 10 years later and you're still doing the same job. Sometimes it's just out of fear that you stay in one place, or sometimes you're just happy to do what you do, and that's completely acceptable. I think that's definitely a thing though. Like, knowing what you enjoy, knowing what type of person you are. Like, are you someone who likes to find a niche and stay in it, or do you want to expand your horizons by learning new things? And many times, learning new things and being able to implement them uh, comes through new job opportunities. So I think focus is definitely a challenge in my field. Another thing too is, the elephant in the room. Most times, I'm pretty much in every situation, I'm the only Black person, uh, or the only person who of color uh, in the spaces that I'm in, and so that is absolutely an obstacle sometimes, at least mentally or subconsciously, uh, when you've had a history of racial discrimination or someone stereotyping you. Like, this is stuff that you think about. And if you don't allow God to heal you from your past with those experiences, it'll affect what you say or how you think about someone or what you do. Another thing too is setting your standard. Like, you can't let everything fly in your atmosphere. Uh, Although you're employed maybe by someone, or you agree to work with someone, you in yourself are valuable, and so you set the standard of what can and can't fly. Disrespect is not tolerated, and you have to be willing to speak up for yourself, because some people are just insecure and they don't realize what they're doing, or maybe they do. Either way, if you don't speak up for yourself, there might be someone watching you who's also like really feeling the effects of you not sticking up for yourself. So that's super important. So I'd say focus is really important. Um, Keeping a level head, even when you're the only person of color, maybe, or the only Black person, is very important. And sticking up yourself is very important. I think another aspect too is being willing to learn and then evolve. Um, I think, at least for me, uh, staying in one area, I would have probably burnt out and maybe said, "Hey, maybe I want to do something else." But uh, as I really prayed and sought God about what my life would be, God began to give me encouragement and inspiration to change things up, so to not stay in one space of software, but to learn new things.
So before you get to your question, Carlin, I just want to comment on what CJ just said, because you guys do come off to me as 2 gentlemen that don't get comfortable. Like, you're always willing, like you said, to evolve or to try something new. Most people in life, people will get a job at Sherwin-Williams and be like, yo, I'm good. This is a good job. You weren't afraid to, you know what, man, I want my next challenge. Let's try Disney. So That's another thing, man. Like, God, man, your parents prepared you guys so much, man. It comes off you, man.
I really appreciate that. I'd say one aspect of that is we could have ignored everything they said. Honestly, we had to opt into that, and a big part of that was really allowing the trials of life to draw us to Christ. He's been the thing that's anchored us, and really given us focus and vision. Um, because like honestly, you could go to church and get all the perfect preaching and holiness, holiness, holiness. You need to do X, Y, and Z, but unless it really gets good to you and you really start following it, will you reap the benefits of it? So I'm thankful for our parents, but I'm also thankful that I was willing to actually listen and then obey, because I feel like I'm reaping the benefits of that.
Sweet. Carlin, you're up.
Yeah. So you ask about, how my experiences in my career, if I've, been witness to kind of discrimination and situations like that. I'm grateful that I haven't experienced very overt racism or overt, stereotyping and discrimination. But what I have experienced multiple times is kind of like a secondary effect of it. At least in hindsight, when I think about the situation, I'm like, this happened because of who I am and what I look like. And so what I mean by that is benefit of doubt. You know, we've talking about our family and how we very healthy environment. I'm also talking about Cleveland Heights University High School District, very diverse, amazing atmosphere. And so what you do is you grow up comfortable around different types of people who don't act like you, think like you, fit your shape and your mold. And so if that's your 24/7, you are comfortable around people that aren't like you, right? Um, and so you don't, yeah, you're aware of racism, you're aware of people who may not like you for random reasons, but to be frank, all the white people I grew up with in school and in college, they were cool people. They didn't have crazy views. So I was able to, you know, have so many positive experiences that I'm not going to say I had a blind eye to how that couldn't be. It's just it hadn't happened a lot. And so what happened is in one of my first jobs out of school, there was a situation where there's really two ways to go. Look, Carlin made a kind of like an accounting mistake, right? Like he put, said he was there for 10 hours when he was there for 9. And it was like a legit honest mistake, one of which wasn't that major. But literally the way that it went was they assumed it was malicious. Now, grant you, I have never been in trouble in my life. Like I have like this amazing, great track record. The way I got the job was through like glowing reviews and all this. And at this first incidence of like a minor slip up, it's like I'm just, there you go. Just knew it. This, thug black young boy criminal who's trying to figure out a way to scam the system. That's basically kind of like the draconian approach they took to the situation. I'm like, it blindsided me. My guard was completely down because I just assumed that, hey, I'm Carlin. I'm this guy. Of course they'll understand it was a simple mistake. Blah blah blah, and we'll move on. Hey, no biggie, right? No, and it was like, whoa! It opened my eyes to like, there's no way if this situation was different, would they have gone this route? And so from that moment on, I was like, okay, my guard went up a little bit, to stop being, so open-eyed. I would say one last thing is with a client of mine. About a year and a half later after this, um, let's just say when you enter a project, you set expectations up front. Hey, our goal is to accomplish ABC. And maybe we said we want to do it in 6 months. So 6 months comes and only A and B are accomplished. But meanwhile, during that 6 months, there was things that happened where we kind of changed the scope. We changed what A and B meant. So there's like a lot of things going on that said, okay, it's not straightforward. So I'm thinking we're on the same page about where things are at. But near the end of that project, it was like this kind of blow up in the sense of, this guy basically was saying, I have trust issues with Carlin in the sense of, I thought we were going to do XYZ, blah, 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 blah. And I feel like you were, blah, blah, blah to me. And I was like, wow, like again, it's a mismatch in understanding and communication styles that frankly wouldn't have happened. And I'm speaking kind of vaguely here, but it was very much something that made me feel like, okay, if I would look different or was different, this situation would have played out so totally different. And so I think the quick way to say it is, while I was blessed to have a great environment that made me not have to worry about issues of discrimination or racial, the world we live in is the world we live in. And sometimes you have to have experiences that open your eyes. And then moving forward, you say, okay, let me guard myself, protect myself, that I'm not going to assume that everyone is bad or has a bad spirit or thinks horribly about me. But let me just make sure I do things in a way so it doesn't give an opportunity for someone to misinterpret your actions, misinterpret your intent. And yeah, sometimes that means it might feel like I have to, not express myself the way I fully I want to. We talk about code switching, changing how you talk in certain environments. You should never feel like you've got to suppress your Black culture. But you recognize that sometimes if I'm about to literally meet with a bunch of 80-year-old white women, maybe there are some things I can do to make them feel a little bit more comfortable, right? So that it's a long-winded answer to your question, but so no, I can't say someone called me the N-word at work, but I would say the experience kind of felt like it afterwards.
We
No,
like
man.
long-winded answers.
Yeah, we like long-winded answers, and I'm gonna tell you this: I haven't experienced "quote unquote" overt racism, but exactly what you just said, that covert, like where they're having different conversations with you than they're having with maybe
Yep.
somebody that looks just like them, or you kind of
Mhm.
notice privileges are being given or positions are being granted, or sort of that esoteric type of feel to it.
Absolutely.
I know exactly what you're talking about. But look, that's the reason why we got the Black Culture Podcast. We can talk about this stuff freely. We don't have to hold
Yes.
back, because you said something earlier, CJ. You were talking about setting boundaries within the workplace, and somebody may be watching you and they may be going through the same thing, but somebody also may be watching to see how you handle it, because they want to know
Yes.
how far they can go with you, right?
Yep. Exactly, man. You
Right.
have to set those
Yeah.
guardrails because honestly, if you want to have peace at night, you need to know that, hey, given the circumstance, I exercised my power. I didn't do anything that was against God. I set some boundaries. And you know what? Whatever happens, it's in God's hands, man. But if you want peace, one thing I struggled with for a long time was fear, the fear to do whatever, man. And one of those things was, okay, am I really sticking up for myself? You know, I know my future is in your hands, God, but like, do I really feel comfortable enough to like really speak up and make sure that my voice is heard? And that's something I really had to work on. But I'm so glad I went ahead and did that. That way I can step into any situation, read the temperature, and be like, hey, this is what's going to happen. You won't speak to me this type of way. Here's what I can do. And this is just what it is, man. And people will respect you for that. I can give you a small example. In my position at Sherwin Williams, it was very much a leadership role, an architect role. So not only was I coding and pairing with developers to help them implement code, but I was giving presentations to higher ups in the company, showing them, hey, we accomplished all of this stuff. But one particular thing, a former developer who went over to the user experience side was trying to get me to implement a new technology that I didn't feel like could work, and I felt that should be a conversation before we go get into that type of thing. And this guy who actually was a part of my interview process was like, "Hey, you know what? If you just use your soft skills, maybe you can just force your way." I'm like, "Dude, watch your mouth, first of all. Second of all, this type of thing is a, we need to have a conversation around these things. I'm dealing with other senior level developers who need to make this decision. I can't just force my way. And so I say that all to say you need to learn how to put up guardrails. Realize that some people, they say stuff and do stuff to you based off of, stereotypes and
Yep, exactly.
preconceived notions.
Yep.
And you can't let that get to you. You can't allow that to destroy your witness. You have to be professional. You have to pray. You need to be able to step back and not be super reactive. And so those are some of the things I've learned over the time. And I'm not perfect, but ultimately I know that everything in life God controls because he's the source of all good. And if I really pray, God will help make me who I'm supposed to be in these situations. So I don't go to bed wondering like, man, did this guy just like railroad me?
It's funny
Nah,
you
man,
say
that's
that
great. That's
because
good
I used
stuff.
to be like I was never really like that confident. The person you see now was not the person I was. So I would have moments where I would be in bed and I like, man, I should have said this, or man, I should have done that. And like you said, that'll like eat you up. So
Yeah,
once
man.
I got confidence, it wasn't like a disrespectful type, but like you said, like setting boundaries, like, yo, no, like that's not how we about to do this. You're not about to talk to me like that. So
Yeah.
everything you touched on was right. But so we got about 6 minutes left. I got a question for both of you guys. I want you guys to, for the younger generation coming up that want to get into the tech industry or want to get into music, what is some advice that you would give them?
I'll go first. I think the most important thing is focus. You need to have, I'd say, a mission. Like, I want to get into technology, but I have to have I want a specific focus. Another thing is like, am I the type of person who's willing to accept ongoing challenges? When it comes to writing software, there is a fundamental core that remains true regardless of what programming language you're using. But things change. There are different practices, similar to accounting, where you have to reapply for certification, that type of thing. There are things that change in software development. Um, and you have to be willing to learn those things. So figure out what type of person you are. Are you someone who kind of likes to find their lane and stay in it, or are you someone who likes to evolve with the times? Um, Another thing too is there are free resources online to get into like software development or web design. Take advantage of those things. YouTube is your best friend. There's also like sites like udemy.com where you can purchase for like $15 a really good course that's an intro all the way to advanced in like web design or like C sharp programming or React JS programming. So really utilize the internet and YouTube as a means of getting your palette wet for software development. And then also look for people who do ultimately what you see yourself doing and don't feel inhibited to ask questions. That person has the option of responding or not responding. If you don't get the response that you want, don't let that discourage you. Keep doing the work, keep studying, keep practicing, keep uh, take the reins and really learn for yourself as much as you can, and then look for people who do what you ultimately want to do.
That's awesome, man. So, Carlin,
Um,
what advice would you give to up and coming black men who are trying to get into this rare space of being in tech?
I say embrace feeling less than and uncomfortable. What I mean by that is you have to hear the advice, try not to be the smartest person in the room. And while that like at face value seems like, fair advice, hey, it makes sense, be around smart people you can learn from. To actually do that, to kind of have the mindset of being okay with feeling dumb, basically, right? Because that's what it really means is, you know, men have egos. It's just natural for us to want to think of ourselves and really project the parts of ourselves that give us confidence and make us feel good. And we don't like to be put in situations where we feel less than, right? But if you're willing to embrace feeling kind of diminished or feeling uh, that you're not so amazing, if you can make yourself feel comfortable with that, that's where you can reap the benefits of so much opportunity. It's partly like it's a humbling mindset. It's a mindset of humility to be able to say, hey, you know what? I have no idea what I'm doing here, but you know what? I have a desire to learn. Can you help me? And that's another part of it, being willing to, if you can accept that there are people that are going to just be better than me or more, smarter than me, and say, hey, I recognize that in you. Hey, you've been there, you've done that. I'm trying to do this. Can you help me? Um, and the reason I go that route is it's really the true advice I have is being willing to ask for help. But sometimes it's hard to even get to that point if you're unwilling to recognize that you need it, or you feel too inhibited to put yourself in the atmospheres where you're around people who can help you. And so, in tech, oftentimes you're going to be the only Black person. And sometimes you're going to want to try to say, hey, I deserve to be here. I'm smart. I'm capable. It's not just, I'm not just a token hire or something, right? But if you go so hard on that, when there are situations where it's like, man, I would love to ask for help, or I would love to get some support here. You spent all this time trying to build this invincible wall, and now you don't feel free to ask for help, So I'd say if you can, take that, hey, you know what? There's something I can learn from everybody. Over time, you will find that you do become more excellent because you're saying everyone can I can learn from any opportunity. I can learn from any situation. It also helps with your empathy. Instead of looking at people for like, this is what they can do for me, or this is what their limitations are, you start thinking about, hey, what can I learn from them? Right. And so, if the question is how do you get into tech, I'd say try to adopt a mindset like that. You can go really, really, really far.
Perfect, perfect. And look, I know you guys have to go, so I want to end on this. If I'm not mistaken, both of you guys are single, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
Yes.
where you are in your career right now, where you are in life right now, what does the future look like for you? What are future aspirations as it pertains to your career, as it pertains to family life and just life in general? What does the next 5, 10 years look like for you?
Well, I I love to say, God, we make plans, God laughs. But ideally, next 5, 10 years, I'd love to be married with children. That's always something that I want. And one of the cool things that I always saw my dad do, or one of the things my dad said he did when he was younger, was when he was 15, 16, he began praying for who his family would be. And so as soon as I heard him say that, I was like, whoa, you know what? I'm going to start praying now. And not only am I going to pray for what I want my family to look like and how to be, I'm going to make sure that I'm better in myself so that I'm prepared for what God has for me. And so, yeah, next 5, 10 years, I'd love to be married to the most beautiful woman in the world with the most beautiful children in the world. And I want to be able to impart, me and my wife, to be able to impart into my children all the things that we've learned, and just in the natural world, but also spiritually, man. And we'll see what happens, man. If the Lord delays his coming.
Nice, nice, brother.
uh, I Well, ditto to everything he said. I agree. Still my mindset. I say, so that I agree with him totally. Everything he said on family. Career wise, hey, if I could be retired
Yep.
in like the next couple of years, so by the time I'm 32, retired, that's the goal.
Yep. And you know
and
what?
then just and then just have fun the rest of my life. So like, you know, I feel like it's okay to keep having those like childhood style dreams. When you were kids, you say, "Hey, I want to be the richest man in the world. I want to be successful," right? But I think it's okay as even adults to still say stuff like that because it's something to strive towards. And hey, the cheesy saying, "Shoot for you know, was it moon,
Stars.
land amongst the stars, whatever
Yeah, yeah,
whatever the
yeah.
thing is." I feel like it's okay to say, "Hey, I want to be retired by 32." Never know. Maybe that means I actually become retired by 40. I'd take that. I'd be happy, you know. So, but I would say, yeah, definitely be a family man and try to repeat the positive environment I had as a kid coming up for maybe my own kids.
Nice. Well, all right, man. We got the brothers in tech, Carlin Jackson, Cedric
Brothers in
Jackson
techs.
Jr.
The Jacksons.
Yes, sir. These are the real Jacksons right
I was
here.
about to say my favorite Jacksons.
Right. These are real Jacksons. Well, hey, man, we really appreciate you guys for taking the time out, getting up on this early, cold, chilly morning. And yeah, man, we definitely gonna have to do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having us. It's an honor, man. Love what you guys are doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
So amazing to be on a Heights podcast.
Man.
I love it.
I'm gonna throw up, man.
I never even thought about that. Wow.
We're so honored to have you as our guest, Willie. Us 3 Heights co-hosts.
All right, fellas, it's the Black Culture Podcast. Good morning.
All right.
God bless you guys.
Peace.